Hey guys, Drifter here. Today I've got a video for you that's all about Modern Warfare 2 and not about the trailer that just dropped, but about the private press briefing that I got before that even happened, where I got to see a ton of stuff from campaign, from multiplayer, from Warzone 2, from additional modes that we're going to talk about. I've seen all the weapons, I've seen some of the new movement abilities in multiplayer, the swimming, the vehicle hijacking, the map scale, just tons and tons of cool stuff we're going to get to today. I think we're mostly going to do campaign stuff in the beginning of the video and then more multiplayer at the end if you want to jump around. So without making you wait anymore, let's just jump right into it. They open up with a campaign trailer, and the trailer seems to indicate that the main plot is Task Force 141 hunting down an Iranian terrorist, more specifically one that works internationally. They open up, oh, we can't get him in Iran. It was like, well, he's not in Iran. Oh, then let's get that booty. And, they go in and do the mission. So the plot picks up 3 years after the first one, and it's about establishing Task Force 141. You saw that in the epilogue where, Price is sitting there looking at the papers and kind of picking his team. Well, now the team is all together. It's all the faces, you got Gaz, you got Price, you got Ghost, you got Soap, who's the rookie once again, but they're taking the plot in a slightly different direction. They added a Mexican Special Forces guy, Colonel Alejandro Vargas. There's actually a surprisingly heavy Mexican influence in this, and a Shadow Company private military contractor, Commander Philip Graves, who can operate in more questionably legal situations. And it picks up after TF-141 has been established, they're formed, they're experienced, they're going on missions, and they're trying to hunt down this evil terrorist and save the world. But the problem is they have to do increasingly bad things to achieve the objective. And it becomes this question, if you're hunting monsters, take care lest you become a monster yourself. So it's sort of a lost in the morality of war story is my impression. Now I'm going to get to talk about the levels that they showed off. Level number 1 is called Night War, and that picks up right where the campaign trailer left off, where they're like, oh, this terrorist, he's not in Iran anymore. So they deploy Task Force 141 to go pick him up. They drop him off with a helicopter, and they were going to drop off an Alpha and a Bravo team. So they drop off Alpha, which is TF-141. Helicopter flies around to drop off Bravo, but gets shot down, Black Hawk Down style. Most of the people inside died, some lived, they're calling for help, but they still have an objective to capture the terrorists, to save the helicopter and not die doing it. So it turns into a series of multiple kill house style breaches where they have to clear small 2-story houses and rotate safely around to the helicopter to provide covering fire and then try to save everybody inside. And it turns into this big dramatic kind of thing. But I kind of like it swaps back and forth between the tactical, like kill house, like clustery night vision in the dark thing, to the bigger levels, to the bigger fight outside pretty naturally. And on that topic, this is a night vision mission, and normally people don't like that. It's very green, but they seem to have gone the extra distance to do the new non-green NVGs that the Army uses. So in case you haven't seen, there are some newer night vision goggles that have minimal color distortion. It just looks a little faded. You can see normal colors. It looked like that, like a much more normal set of night vision goggles, which I think people are gonna like much better. I noticed immediately that the guns are very loud, especially the sniper and DMR rifles. Like, they are loud. It's Modern Warfare 2 loud, which is realistic, it's accurate, and some people love it, but it's probably gonna blow my ears right off my head. And they do have a lot of gas and smoke and somewhat realistic recoil, so that's a good thing too. They have changed up the kill houses a little bit. In one of the levels, somebody actually bust up from a trap door down below to put a machine gun up to spray at Task Force 141, so you have to take that guy down. But this is the perfect level to talk about weapons, because this showed off a ton of weapons. I saw an MP7, I saw a Bison, pump shotgun, something called a LAC 56. It kind of looks like a Kilo 141, M16, M24, Mark 21. I saw a Vector looking very similar to the Fennec from Warzone. I saw an Uzi. I saw a little bit of all of the classics going around. I didn't get to see them used that much. The few that they were using were exceptionally loud. Now that's all for that level. They showed off another level called Wet Work, and I thought that was going to be the classic Wet Work mission, but it's a different one, and it is set in Amsterdam. Now that's kind of an unusual setting for a COD game because I like it. One of the guys in the chat was from Amsterdam. He said it was extremely realistic looking and they just nailed the look of his city. This is a stealthy mission, and it's a swimming mission. You have to swim around under boats. You have to, navigate the underwater plants. You have to come up and stab people on the dock. You have throwing knives to doink people as they go by on boats, and you're trying to sneak in and achieve this stealth objective. and they spent a lot of time playing around in the water. I think was to show off the new water physics, which we'll talk about in a little bit. The water has an entirely different set of physics to it. It's natural, it's not pre-programmed, it has great reflections, it has great lighting. It also does very interesting things to your movement and the ballistics of your weapons and your equipment. More specifically, when you shoot people out of the water, far lower bullet velocity, so it takes way more shots to kill. Same kind of thing shooting into the water. And then also when you're underwater, you can only use certain weapons that kind of aren't, gas blowback because they would jam. And the whole mission is like a sneak around and stab kind of deal. A lot of water work. They really wanted to show that off. The level that I wish to God they would have shown more of is one called Tower. This reminds me of that mission from COD Ghost where you go in the building and it's like collapsing because you've screwed up. Except instead of taking down the building, what they decided to do is allow you to go Rainbow Six Siege style when you rappel, and you can stay vertical, you can rotate upside down, slide in the window, shoot through the window, and the level is essentially a puzzle. The helicopter drops you off on the roof, and then you have to rappel down to get the bad guys, right? But it's this giant grid of probably like 10 wide by like 100 down, so probably like 1,000 different little windows, and you have to swing back and forth and go down and find the people and shoot them through the glass, and you can kind of choose where to go in and what to do. And I know developers hate this, but it basically looked like a Rainbow Six Siege style rappelling option, but on a skyscraper and on total steroids, and it was located in Osaka, Brazil, which I don't know very much about, but probably gonna make for a fun map. They very briefly showed off a map called Convoy, which was basically to demonstrate the new vehicle work and vehicle physics. It opens up with you holding onto the roof of a car, and then you shoot people, and then you jump to the enemy car, land in the truck, actually, land in the truck bed, stab, shoot, cap the driver in the back of the head like you're playing Warzone, and then your guy like grabs one of those handles and swings around and jumps into the driver's seat to continue to drive the car. It was like literally Halo style, but happening naturally in Call of Duty. The vehicles seemed to handle well, they were realistic, and you essentially have to play this level and Mad Max a convoy. It's like TF-141 is chasing down this armored convoy, and you have to take your big cars in versus their big trucks and just big crazy Mad Max road fight. I thought it looked great. There was like an 18-wheeler, like a big truck you can run on the top of, like an action star, and jump off onto another car, but not so much in a pre-programmed way, but in a much more dynamic where if you miss, you get crushed and run over just like in a Warzone kind of way. It looked great, and they did a actual metric ton of vehicle work that's going to carry over to multiplayer and Warzone 2 that we're going to talk about a little bit later. But in short, to whet your appetite, to tease you just a little bit, they've got hijacking, they've got, you can shoot out the engine blocks, the doors, the glass, you can pop the tires. There's a couple of different unique ways to destroy vehicles, to hijack them, to run them in the water. They change the physics on them, and you can also just jump on enemy vehicles and like latch on and hold and shoot in. If you're inside the car, you can shoot out 360, but you have to lean out the window, exposing yourself, probably for balance in Warzone, but it looks fantastic. Speaking of looking fantastic, the graphics are definitely on that new MW engine. It's pretty considerably improved. We're later down the PlayStation 5 and new console lifecycle, and the game looks very, very good, even though the gameplay we saw was on PlayStation and not PC, and they left that stupid motion blur that's on by default for your guns in the background. And if any developer is watching, please remove that option. It makes the game look crappier. I'm gonna do that day one. Same kind of motion blur, but the graphics just generally look better, and they seem very efficient because they scaled things up a lot, but we're going to get to that in a different section. We did have a little conversation with the developers about their vision and what they wanted, and they said they wanted to tell a fictional story that's been inspired by real-life events, very similar to the first Modern Warfare. And the first game, they said their goal was to be provocative, and they definitely were. I mean, you can shoot babies, there's kids killing soldiers, and people getting gassed, and terror attacks, and a lot of like kind of horrible stuff. It was very provocative. And this time they decided, instead of going like provocative and offensive, they would go heroic. So we've already seen the horrors. Now we have to see the people that stand against these horrors of war and see them doing good things. So I think it's going to be more of an uplifting message. And there's supposed to be more of a sense of life in environments, and a couple of different ways they accomplish this. I did take a look around. The stuff that you can interact with and destroy isn't considerably bigger, but Infinity Ward used that, I call it the garbage modeling technology, where you can take a couple of photos of like a real thing and 3D model it. So if you think about movies, sometimes they look too clean, too perfect, and what you want realism, a place that's been lived in, that's dirty, dirty dishes, plates, little stains, thing like that. So I think they did a lot of that to capture more realistic realistic environments. And they're also planning to scale this up with absolutely ludicrous, massive numbers of AI, both in campaign, multiplayer, and in Warzone. They said the current cap was 300 AI and 100 players all operating on the same map to give you a massive scale of battle. I have no idea how any of that is supposed to work. We're going to talk about the AI in just a little bit. And they said it's separate experiences for different players, but you can all play together. Like, apparently you can play with your friends and only fight AI and let them fight people if you want to. I didn't get a really clear explanation on this, but it was some sort of way for casuals to contribute in like really hardcore competitive kind of things. And I kind of think that they're just going to give people side objectives that they can play with if they want to. Moving along, we're talking about graphics. We talked about the motion blur, the water combat. The water looks fantastic. They did a ton of stuff with the water, programming it to have depth. The water has flow. If you're in a river, it'll push you. It has rapids. It has waves. It can flip your boat. The water doesn't come through the boat. You can drive a variety of boats, mostly the little inflatable ones, but also some amphibious APCs, both in Warzone and campaign and everywhere. And the water is supposed to be its entirely own dynamic. You can jump in and get swept away. You can hijack a boat. You can shoot people from under the water if you've got a bunch of bullets. It seems kind of crazy. There's also a visibility thing. Some areas of the map really crystal clear, like a beautiful beach. Some is dirty, muddy water. Some's a sewer, anywhere in between. So water can also help you hide. Moving on from that, they very briefly showed off Gunsmith. We got a tiny little sliver of a teaser from it, but I'm going to extract as much information as humanly possible. There are 10 attachments on every weapon that I could see that was currently available. I counted 10 total different slots, so that's quite a lot. And what's interesting is that you unlock things down platform trees. So you start with, say, like an AR-15, and that's your start weapon. And as you unlock, you can continue down the AR category, and you can work more toward like NATO or more like Russian block weapons and sort of get more and more advanced. So the more you use assault rifles, the more you unlock them. And the same is true of SMGs and snipers. It's not necessarily just a total level-based thing. It's what you want, which I think is good. If you want to unlock all your shotguns first, you can do that. All of the weapons have a set of shared attachments and then some unique attachments. That's been true of every Call of Duty. And one of the ones that seemed absolutely insane to me, and I have no idea how this will work, they showed off a very advanced stat page. So I think in Modern Warfare, we might get some of the ones like we've had in Black Ops Cold War. And I think that one of the great things about it is that you have sliders on your attachments. So let's say you put like a new kind of stock on there or something, right? You can adjust the length of the stock, but that also adjusts its stats. You can make it faster, but with like worse recoil. And then there's another bar on the side where you could do like strafing speed versus ADS speed. It's like a literal like little slidey bar. So almost all attachments have two sliders, one vertical and one horizontal, like a little graph. So the attachment does its things already, but you can choose how much of one thing it does versus another to try to find kind of a balance in there. And I don't know what the scaling stats are going to be like. It's supposed to be like tweaking a weapon. So that could either be really confusing or really awesome if you wanted to make some small changes. Moving along, about some less than small changes, they made some pretty considerable changes to the AI. They wanted the AI to be more challenging for enemy players. They also wanted the players to be able to identify AI somewhat easily. And they really wanted the AI to move around the map better. So what they did is got GoPro footage from actual elite operators doing movements in airsoft in real life and tried to model that, where they like look at the environment, they check their corners, they peek things, they move and rotate a little more naturally. And I get to see this all happening live. And I don't think it's going to fool anybody like, oh my God, it's a real person. But they do move way more naturally and they look much more like they belong there. As I mentioned before, the AI is going to be upscaled massively in terms of how many are on the map. There's supposed to be 300 total possible on the map, plus 100 live players. I'm assuming that's for Warzone. I don't know if there's any PvE mode that could sustain that large of a firefight. But that's a tremendous amount of players and things on the map. That's a big scale up. And that also means that in campaign, you can have AI, like huge AI combat, like Halo style, and you can kind of choose your own path. You can do interesting things with it in multiplayer. And one of the developers mentioned that Warzone 2 is not a fixed name. Warzone 2 might get renamed, which I can't believe, but apparently it's not finalized. I think if they name it anything other than Warzone 2, they're totally crazy. A huge, absolutely massive section of this that they only had one slide for, they talked about briefly, but it'll probably have more impact than all this other stuff combined, is something that they're internally calling CoD 2.0. It's just CoD 2.0. And they're trying to connect gameplay built on the CoD engine. I think that's a subtle nod to making all the studios use the Modern Warfare engine. I think that's the one they're using moving forward. They're putting Warzone 2 on Steam. That is a real thing. Warzone 2 is getting Steam. Warzone 2 is going to be on the new engine. CoD is going to be on Steam. All that stuff is just moving to Steam, so people should be happy about that. And Warzone is also coming to mobile. That's kind of a huge announcement here. I don't know if it's going to be the same engine or if it's going to be the company, you know, that Tencent hired to develop this to do their version of Warzone. I think it would be awesome if you had Warzone mobile and you could crossplay with PC to some, you know, capability. I know that probably wouldn't look as good. And they've got Ricochet. And there's also supposed to be more stuff coming, more integrations to kind of tie this all together. They really want to be Fortnite super bad. And then now finally, after what, 16, 17 minutes of me babbling, let's talk about multiplayer. As we mentioned before, water is going to be on a lot more multiplayer maps, and the water isn't necessarily for killing people like it was in Black Ops 3 and 4, but this water is more for obfuscation. You have a lot of variability and visibility, so you use it to hide, slower bullets shooting out. We have drivable boats, we have amphibious vehicles. Wheelson got an upgrade, he can swim now, that's kind of interesting. You can still knee slide. They made jokes about slide canceling, but didn't really clarify a whole lot. The new movement mechanic is you can now dive to prone. I think it's kind of like a dolphin dive, but not as extreme. You just fall down to prone like super fast, but you have a little animation for it. So that could be helpful. And they decided that wasn't enough. Since you are going forward, you can now dive and slide under small things. You can actually dive and bust through windows and land and shoot people. So that could be pretty fun. They've done some pretty big changes to the mantle mechanics. They have one much like Apex. You know, in Apex, you can crawl up, put your hands up and hold, and then kind of peek your head up to see what's over. You can do that in Call of Duty now, and a feature they are playing with is also to one-hand peek and point a pistol over, not a full gun, just a pistol. So you're doing that. They're also playing with the ability to kind of pull yourself up a little bit and throw and grab a higher ledge. This makes it a little bit easier if you miss your target when you're parachuting in Warzone or something like that. And those aren't final features, but I do hope to see them. Now we get to talk about vehicles. I hit that really hard and fast earlier, but they pretty much massively overhauled the Warzone vehicles. The Warzone vehicles are just very, very simple vehicles. I mean, you blow them up, they disappear, they don't take particularly unique damage, but now they do. So the first change is that to shoot out of a vehicle, you have to lean out of it, just like you're in Blackout, you know, and that gives some fairness to shooting, but it also allows you to look and shoot in 360 while you're in the vehicle, which is kind of nice. The next one is that you can shoot or blow off the doors of the cars, the windows, the hood, all kinds of stuff like that. So if you can blow off a door, you can expose the entire inside of the vehicle. You can shoot out the tires to make them drive worse. You can run up to a vehicle and you can climb in it, on top of it to hold on, or you can hijack it like your Master Chief taking a Banshee from an Elite, which is kind of neat. They have their own health, which is a little bit more clearly displayed on screen. And they also have vehicle husks. So if you think about it in Warzone, you'd blow up the vehicle and it would slide for like a few feet and then just kind of poof, disappear, gone. Very unlikely that you would get hit by a burning vehicle because it doesn't stay on the map very long. That's not true. They're real physics objects now. So when you blow them up, they tumble, they destroy, they can smash into water, kill people, do all sorts of things. And they did tease this really interesting big helicopter, a troop carrier helicopter that apparently players can fly and drive around and do things with, I assume mostly in Warzone, but that'll be something to see. When it comes to new equipment, they did show off the tactical camera, which is a little one you can throw down like from Black Ops 1, except it mounts to anything. You can fling it on the ceiling, the floor, the wall, whatever. And you can obviously look down the side of your camera anytime you want, or your teammates can, or you can look down your teammates' cams. You can all just throw 6 cams and kind of get really good vision on various areas of the map. You can set your camera to motion alert you. So if like somebody's like going to defuse the bomb, your camera will like boop, 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 somebody's here. So that's kind of interesting, kind of cheesy. I think that's only going to matter in tactical modes. They added a way to throw grenades through walls called the drill charge. This is a real thing. You stick it to the wall, kind of like in real life, and it drills in bzzz, and then shoots out a little grenade on the other side that blows up whatever in the room. That also works on vehicles, but uniquely with vehicles, it doesn't damage the vehicle itself very much. So if you stick a vehicle with a drill charge, you could blow up most of the people inside, and then you could just hijack a vehicle with probably like 75% or more health. Similarly, they also added a device. It's an EMP device, but they decided to name it DDoS. Love the name, because I can't tell you how many times I've been DDoSed and ranked. Pretty much works the same way. It's like those drone guns you see in downtown LA or now in Ukraine where you shoot down drones. It's like a directed EMP. So you can just point this thing and click it and it'll disable vehicles temporarily. It can also detect equipment. So it's a little bit like sitrep. That's kind of interesting. And the weirdest one, the one that I think is going to be by far the cheesiest, is they have an inflatable decoy. These are field upgrades, if I'm not mistaken. I think these are field upgrades. An inflatable, I can't even say it. This is so ridiculous. Inflatable decoy, just like in Metal Gear, what is it? Snake Eater, one of the more modern ones with the inflatable solid snakes. You can throw it on the ground, and what it will do is sit there and do nothing. But if an enemy comes by, it will pop up and orient right at them. So your decoy will pop and rotate. If you throw it in a crouched space, it'll pop up crouched. If you throw it in the water, it'll inflate in like a swimming kind of pose, and it just pops and turns, so people will shoot at it. It's very little health, but it does give away their position. And if they get too close to it and try to touch it, it's also a claymore and blows up. So I see some potential hilarity here for a little bit, and then perhaps a lot of frustration as I get sick of running into these things. So as far as map size goes, they promised some extremely large-scale maps for ground war and other modes, as they said, probably the DMZ mode that's been leaking. So they're going to have very big ground war maps, just like Modern Warfare 2019. And then they have a bunch of 6v6 maps, and the developers said that they were trying to make these smaller and tighter. I'm imagining kind of like some of the smaller maps that came out later in Modern Warfare 2019's life cycle that were very popular. And these maps are going to have less climbing, less grappling, less mantling, because there's going to be so much of that in the big maps. These are going to be like your classic 6v6 3-lane bounce house maps, as I call them. And I think that should give people enough variety. Then finally, here, now the end of the video, there's a couple of new multiplayer modes they talked about. There is a mode called Knockout, which is somewhere between Steal the Bacon and Eliminate the Oddball. There's a bag of money that you have to hold and escape with. You can use the money to buy back teammates if they've been eliminated. You can save your team. You can secure the bag. You can do some things like that. It kind of actually reminds me a little bit of that like heist mode from BO4. So we'll see how that plays. And then there's one called Prisoner Rescue, which by its description sounds very much so like Rainbow Six Siege. It's one life. You don't plant bombs. You have to secure the hostages safely. You can grapple in multiplayer. And this one is specifically for breaching, like how you bust in through windows, how you bust in through doors, how you clear rooms when things are very destructible. And what I'm mostly hearing about this, like what I'm feeling from what they're telling me, is Rainbow Six Siege. So that's good tactical mode. So we got like some run around with your chicken, like a chicken with your head cut off, shoot people mode, some tactical modes, some big modes. So if any of these are half good, that sounds good to me. So that's all for this video. This video is just a pure factual one where I'm just doing information dump on you guys to the best of my ability. Subsequent videos are going to be about some stuff that I saw that comes out as later embargoes expire, and of course my opinion about all of this, especially Warzone 2 and multiplayer, because I kind of like what I see, but I also see potential for a lot of cheesiness. So we'll talk about that in later videos. If you enjoyed this content, don't forget to like, favorite, and subscribe. Drifter out.